There are both true stories and stories that haven't been proven to be true about the deaths of Christian martyrs in the early days of the Church. No matter how true the stories are, this makes a sick sense. Even the story of how the perfect victim, Jesus Christ, died is a very cruel one. So it's easy to think that either the Romans really were cruel to the early Christians, or some stories about saints' deaths were made up to mark out a spiritual height to be admired, but not necessarily emulated, as Paula Fredriksen of Boston University puts it. While many stories are told about the men, women, and children who became saints, the Catholic Church does not believe all of them to be 100% true. There is a reason why hagiography also has a bad connotation. Some of the things saints were praised for or how they were killed are clearly just stories. For example, St. George killing a dragon is a dragon story, but other ways of torturing people and coming up with creative ways to kill them are right in line with what we know about history. Wait until the end to see some of the goriest ways that saints may or may not have died. St. Lawrence was roasted alive over hot coals. St. Lawrence was a deacon who was tasked with the responsibility of accounting for the material wealth of the church. He was responsible for distributing all of this wealth to those who were less fortunate. According to St. Ambrose of Milan, when the Roman authority requested that Lawrence demonstrate the treasures of the church, Lawrence instead showed them the needy people whom he had sponsored. In retaliation, the Roman prefect seized Lawrence and put his body on a giant gridiron, roasting him alive over hot coals. After suffering calmly and gracefully, Ambrose claims, Lawrence joked to his persecutors, "I'm well done, turn me over." Despite the fact that contemporary historians disagree with this account, stating that it is more likely that Lawrence was decapitated, he continues to be revered as the patron saint of chefs to this day, in addition to being the patron saint of the poor, firefighters, students, tanners, and underground miners. St. Antipas was baked in a bronze bull. After being burnt alive in a brazen bull in the year 92 CE, St. Antipas was a bishop of Pergamos, which is a Greek city located in what is now Turkey. Prisoners were placed into a hollow bronze statue of a bull, which was then placed over a fire to cook the individual who was still within. This method of torture was developed in ancient Sicily. Screams made by the individual were transformed into the bellows of a bull by means of a network of tubes and pipelines. Even if the Catholic Church disagrees with the account of Eustace, the same tragedy befell a number of other Christian martyrs, including St. Eustace, his wife, and their children, as well as Pelagia of Tarsus, who ultimately perished. Perillus of Athens, the inventor of the brazen bull, is said to have been the first person to be roasted inside of it. As stated by the historian Diodorus Siculus, a Sicilian tyrant named Phalaris was the recipient of the bull that Perillus brought to him, and he boasted about its exquisite design. About the sound system, the Perillus said, "If you ever wish to punish some man, shut him up within the bull and lay a fire beneath it. By his groanings the bull will be thought to bellow, and his cries of pain will give you pleasure as they come through the pipes in the nostrils." Following that, Phalaris gave the inventor the order to enter the bull in order to exhibit the sounds that it produced. Phalaris made the decision to put Perillus to death by lighting him on fire inside his own invention, which may or may not have been a surprise turn of events. Phalaris is said to have been murdered by a bunch of rebels in the same brazen bull in the year 554 BCE. Saint Appian was beaten, roasted, then thrown into the sea. According to the narrative surrounding Saint Appian, also known as Appian, he was just 18 years old when he was put to death in the year 305 or 306 CE for rebuking a pagan magistrate named Urbanus who was offering a sacrifice. Appian had recently converted to Christianity while he was away at school, which was contrary to the wishes of his parents, who fought his efforts to convert to Christianity. Appian was taken into custody by the guards in the city of Caesarea Maritima for interrupting the sacrifice. After being taken into custody, he was subjected to torture and then imprisoned up in a dungeon. He was beaten with clubs the following day, his flesh was torn with iron claws, and he was slowly roasted over a fire, but the magistrate managed to keep him alive till the next day. After being held captive for 3 days, Aphian ultimately succumbed to his ordeal when his captors threw him into the water while tying stones to his feet. It is said that after that, the city was devastated by an earthquake, which caused his body to be thrown back onto the shore. Saint Eulalia rolled down a hill in a knife-filled barrel. Despite the fact that not much is known about the life of Saint Eulalia, who was 13 years old and lived in Barcelona, Spain, the folklore surrounding her death is horrifying. The legend claims that Diocletian, who was the emperor of Rome at the time, ordered her to endure 13 tortures, one for each year of her life, because she refused to renounce her Christian faith. Diocletian reigned alone from 284 CE to 286 CE, and during his co-reign from 286 CE to 305 CE. One of the most heinous is referred to as Saint Eulalia's descent, and it involves the execution of a woman who was rolled down the street while being placed inside a barrel that was filled with either blades or shattered glass. Some of the other forms of torture that she endured were severe beatings, having her breasts cut off, and being crucified on an X-shaped cross. The decapitation of Eulalia is said to have been the cause of her death, according to her tale. It was said that a white dove flew out of her mouth or neck after her head had fallen to the ground during the incident. Saint Sebastian was shot full of arrows, then beaten with clubs. During the year 288 CE, Saint Sebastian is said to have survived being bound to a tree and blasted full of arrows, only to be clubbed to death later on. This is according to legend. Following the discovery that Sebastian adhered to the new faith, the Roman Emperor Diocletian, who was notorious for his contempt for Christians, gave the order to execute Sebastian at the time. Taking into consideration that Sebastian was as full of arrows as an urchin, the application of the cruel method of death was unexpectedly unsuccessful. Sebastian was able to have his revenge on Diocletian for the very last time by startling him on a stairwell. This occurred after a woman named Irene treated him and brought him back to health. Because the emperor was shocked to learn that the future saint was still alive, he gave the order for Sebastian to be put to death by being beaten with cudgels. This was done to ensure that Sebastian was indeed dead. After having a prophetic dream, Lucina, who would later become a saint herself, retrieved Sebastian's body and arranged for his burial in the catacombs of Rome. Sebastian's body had been thrown into a sewer, but another devoted woman came to his help. Saint Sebastian is currently revered as the patron saint of a wide variety of people, including soldiers, athletes, those who are sick with the plague, and archers of all things. Saint Euphemia was fed, first to lions, then to a bear. According to a Christian tradition, Saint Euphemia, who lived in Chalcedon, which is located close to Istanbul in contemporary times, refused to take part in the sacrifices that were performed by pagan priests. Instead, she made the decision to gather with dozens of other Christians in a house and worship God while hiding there. The initiative was not well received by the governor, who was known as Priscus. In an effort to break Euphemia's spirit, she was subjected to torture for several days. She was the youngest member of the group. The natives tested it first, but they were unsuccessful. After that, she was given to the Emperor Diocletian, who ordered his people to employ more harsh strategies, such as a wheel that broke. Euphemia was subjected to the care of lions in the arena by Diocletian, who knew that nothing could break her, or at the very least, they were intended to consume her. According to the narrative, the large cat simply licked her wounds throughout the attack. In order to accomplish the task at hand, the emperor had to unleash an uncaring bear on her in order to accomplish it. Enemies of Saint Romanus cut his tongue out. Saint Romanus, who had been a deacon by the name of Romanus of Caesarea in his life, came dangerously close to being burned to death in the year 303 or 304 CE. On the other hand, Emperor Galerius came to the conclusion that it would be more expedient to remove his tongue and then choke him to death. Given that Romanus was an ardent preacher in his native Palestine, it is quite likely that the emperor's decision to chop out Romanus's tongue was a symbolic act on his behalf. A different version of events asserts that Romanus could not be executed by being burned at the stake because the rain kept extinguishing the flames. According to one version of events, the governor finally stifled his tongue because he refused to stop praising Christ and condemning the gods of the pagan religion. It is said that Romanus's faith was so great that he continued to preach even when he was unable to speak. It was decided to hang him instead of trying to burn him alive because the rain kept putting out any attempts to do so. St. Lucy's eyes were gouged out. In those years, St. Lucy was known as Lucia. She lived in Syracuse in the Western Roman Empire from 283 to 304 CE. She promised to stay single and give all of her money to poor people. Eutychia, Lucia's sick mother, didn't know about her vow or her Christian faith. She was worried about her daughter's future, so she set up Lucia to marry a pagan guy. St. Agatha is said to have come to Lucia in a dream and told her that her mother would get better because of her faith. The story goes that Lucia's mother really did get better. She reportedly told her mother, "Whatever you give away at death for the Lord's sake you give because you cannot take it with you." This made her mother agree to give the family's money to the poor. Give everything you plan to give away when you die to the real Savior now, while you are still healthy. When Lucia's fiancé found out that she was going to give away her inheritance, which would have been a gift, he spoke out against her. Paschasius, who was governor of Syracuse, heard about Lucia's Christian kindness and told her to burn a sacrifice for the emperor. Because she said no, Paschasius planned to make her defile herself at a brothel. But it is said that not even a team of oxen could take her away. Then Lucia's guards tried to set her on fire, but the wood around her wouldn't catch fire. She was finally killed by a sword to the neck, but not before her eyes were cut out. Some stories say she cut out her own eyes to make a lover who was looking at them all the time mad. There are also stories that say her eyes were fixed by the time her body was ready to be buried. Saint Philomena was whipped, nearly drowned, shot full of arrows, then decapitated. Sister Maria Luisa de Jesus, a Neapolitan nun, asserted in 1833 that she had a vision in which she found out about the life of Saint Philomena, who lived in the year 291 to 304 CE. The Greek princess Philomena, together with her parents, the king and queen, had converted to Christianity. Philomena was a member of the royal family. In spite of the fact that he had fallen in love with Philomena and requested her to be his wife, Emperor Diocletian nevertheless vowed to wage war against the family and their subjects. As a result of her refusal, the emperor grew furious and began to beat her. However, he stopped doing so after angels made her feel better. By affixing an anchor to her, he attempted to drown her, but angels cut the rope that was attached to her. He went so far as to order her to be shot with arrows. But the angels not only healed her wounds, but also sent some of the arrows flying back at the humans who were shooting them. As soon as Diocletian became frustrated with Philomena and the angels who were protecting her, he simply had her beheaded. It appears that the angels were unable to fulfill such a demanding request. Saint Castulus was buried alive. According to the narrative, Saint Castulus was responsible for the conversion of a large number of people to Christianity, which did not sit well with Emperor Diocletian. Castulus was employed as the valet of the imperial court, and he made exclusive use of his position to perform religious rituals within the palace. His converts were baptized by Pope St. Caius, or Gaius, and he even provided shelter for Christians in his home. He brought his converts to the Pope. Torquatus, an apostate, was ultimately responsible for his betrayal, as he was the one who informed an official in Rome about his crimes. In 288 CE, Castulus was put to death after being subjected to a series of torturous acts, including being buried alive in a sand pit located outside of the city. We hope you liked this video, subscribe to the channel if you're a history addict, and please let us know about what civilization or time period we should talk about. Also, watch another video here.